Hi, thanks for joining me today. I'm Eileen Chevalier, and this is the More Stems lesson from Eileen Chevalier's Typewriter Alphabet Flashcards Botany series. So today we're going to look at more stems because they are often the trickiest plant parts to identify. They're so incredibly diverse. The basal plate stem and a daffodil bulb is just one example. That was in the Not Roots video. In this lesson, we're going to look at another unusual stem, the rhizome. So if you want to go ahead and find your DK Ultimate Visual Dictionary, we're going to use that same page that we used last time. And I'll just show it to you right now. The rhizomes are at the bottom of the page. There's not a lot. There's a lot of books, a lot of plant books don't really talk specifically about rhizomes, but I love them just because I love the plants that come with them. You're also going to want your flashcards. And the flashcard that we're going to use today is the eye, because iris grow on rhizomes. So this is the iris that I drew. I've been growing iris for a long time and they're so beautiful. I hope that you get a chance to grow them, but I'll show you some of mine in this video in case you don't have your own to look at. All right, so also, of course, you need your journal, and why don't you go ahead and get your journal out, and I'll read the definition for you for today. Rhizome, specialized stem that grows at or below ground, sending new roots down and new leaves up. So today for Question and Investigate, we are going to look more at the rhizome. Dividing plants that grow on rhizomes is a fun way to share plants with friends. So that's vegetative propagation. If you propagate an iris and you share it, is the iris that your friend has the same as yours, or is it slightly different, and why? What differences happen because the DNA is different or because the plant is adapting to a new environment? What factors change how the iris grows? So if I take plant material that's growing from a single plant that I have, then the DNA is the same throughout there. So like every part of my body, even though they're different parts, cut off my arm, that is still my DNA, right, in my arm. Just it's the same DNA that was in the rest of my body. So if you have a plant and you break off a piece of the plant, it's the same DNA. So it's almost like they have the same plant that you have. But it may manifest differently because the way that our bodies work even, so like if I am living in one environment versus like the desert versus the North Pole, like my body is going to respond differently. But there are changes that happen over time, and your body learns from your environment what genes it needs to express, and then it even learns which ones to pass on to your kids based on where you're living and the influences from the environment in you. So even though it's the same exact DNA that you just gave your friend, the manifestations could be different depending on the environment that they're in. And even just like water and sunlight, all these things will affect the plant. Rhizomes are this is the second one, are a special stem type. Examine how the rhizome branches. How is this similar to the stems that you can see above ground? So I'm actually going to show you a piece of one of my iris, and I'll hold it down like it is normally in the ground, and then I'll lift it up for you. And think about if that were just a tree or a bush or some other plant. How does that compare to the stems that are above ground versus these stems that are underground? What things are the same and what things are different? Bonus. Did you know that the Christmas cactus doesn't have leaves? This is so wild to me. Those are actually stems. How can a plant survive without leaves? How do we know that those are stems and not leaves? What does the flower attach to? And what gives the plant structure? So if we were to think, okay, what part of the plant is this? Because we think leaves, if it's green, it's a leaf. But as we've already seen in the roots video, we learned that there are roots that can photosynthesize, like the orchid. So aerial roots have that green covering on them. And then there are also stems that can photosynthesize. So that's not one of the jobs that they always do. Like oak tree stems don't generally photosynthesize, but Christmas cactus certainly do because they don't have leaves. So they have to photosynthesize. And that is why they're green. And they are what is giving the plant its structure. So journal, go ahead and get out your journal and think about there are two activities that we have for today. The first one is to try to find fresh, soft skinned ginger at your local market or grow your own. I grew mine last year. It's actually really not too bad. It's super fun too. Make predictions in your journal about what will happen when you put a piece of fresh ginger on a dry counter and let it sit. Record how it changes each day. What differences can you observe in the appearance, texture, weight, and smell? If you have a large enough piece, you can cut some off every few days and see how the taste changes. So what is happening? Why is that ginger so thick? Right? What is it doing? What is it storing? And then as it sits out and starts to dry out and decay, what is happening? Are the chemicals in there changing? And is that changing the way that it tastes? Are the carbohydrates changing? Why does the texture change? The texture is dramatically different over time. So what's going on there, and what is it that's creating that texture? So look back at the diagrams and the cross sections that you have of stems and try to see what's happening and compare that with the ginger that you have. If you have a microscope or a loupe, those are really great ways to see more specifically what's happening and to see that happen over time. So you'll want to leave some space in your journal to document it as it progresses. The other activity is to draw or copy an illustration of rhizomes. Draw a line to show where the top of the soil is, because some rhizomes, like the iris, kind of like sit, so like they're partly in the air and then partly underground, and then some, like the ginger, is completely underground. Just to kind of document like what the differences are. If you want to do one of each, then that's a really great way to compare those two different types of rhizomes. The other really interesting thing, and we'll drop in a video here, is that with ginger, so iris, when we looked at it, it was flat and it was branching and that you could see it on top of the dirt. But the ginger, when I was watching videos and learning how to plant my own ginger, I realized that it doesn't do the same thing. So it looks similar, but because there's no vegetation on the ginger that you buy from the store, you don't really know like how it's working in the ground, but it's actually turned 90 degrees. So when you plant the ginger and as it grows in the soil, it is growing up and down rather than horizontally. So it's pretty interesting. All right, guys, I hope that you have a really fun time exploring rhizomes, and maybe if you don't have any rhizomes to share with your friends, you will find people who have rhizomes to share with you and grow them and watch them as they emerge. New plants emerge every year, and then divide them. Iris are weird. You want to divide them in the middle of summer. A lot of other things you're doing in the spring and fall, so it's nice because there's not as much to do with planting in the summer. So you can divide all your iris and share them with people around you, especially if they're gorgeous. Then you can just share the beauty. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you on the next video. Bye.